Hey guys, and welcome back to Purgatory Ironworks. I am your host, Trenton Ty, and today, for our new 2025 season, we are getting into some good stuff. Now, as most of you guys know, we are back filming, and we got about 4 months before we start our fall season. I wanted to try to get back into the YouTube spirit of things after a relatively long hiatus. But here's the thing, during this entire time, I have had some Patreons that have been with me through the whole thing from way on back. And as we get started and we're pushing Patreon again, it's time that I made up a little bit of lost ground for those folks that have really been supporting me. And there's a couple of heavy hitters that have been with me for a while, have made significant contributions to the channel and what we've been doing. And I need to kind of even those scales out. So we're going to kill two birds with one stone. Today, I'm actually going to be making an item for one of our heavy hitter Patreons as a thank you, and it's going to be super cool. Now, what isn't super cool is right now we are in triple digit heat in South Georgia with going on 90% humidity. It is death outside. So we are effectively trying to hide in the leather room just a little bit until we go back and forth so possibly we don't die of heat stroke immediately upon stepping foot outside. So guys, today we're going to be doing something that's pretty darn cool. Now, as a blacksmith and having worked in the film industry and having to make a lot of different things, of course, leather work is a huge portion of it. Now, not just if you're a knife maker, but it's hard to be a traditional craftsman and not jump genres. I mean, for goodness sake, we were just making brooms the other day. But today we're going to be doing a little bit of leather work with one of the coolest items I think I have ever played with. We're going to be making a leather canteen. Now, back in the old days when I was at the Renaissance Festival, I saw a few of these. They're very uncommon. I don't want to say rare, but they're very uncommon. A lot of your traditional Revolutionary War era reenactors use them, so it's kind of an older thing. But they are relatively easy to do, but they are so super cool looking. So today we're going to step out into our leather room and we're going to be making one of those molded leather canteens for one of our top Patreons today. I hope you enjoy the show. All right, guys, so here we are in the leather room, and you're just going to have to endure the sound of the air conditioning behind me because it's about 11 o'clock and it's already 11,000 degrees. So we're making do. So guys, to make our canteen, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with our pattern, and this is the same paper that we use to basically pack up our knives. It's just a craft paper. And when you're doing leather work and even in steel work, when you're cutting out blades, doing a paper pattern is absolutely the first place that you want to start. Now this particular shape is one that's kind of been out there. It's just kind of a teardrop shape, nothing super remarkable about it. They've got heart shapes and just about anything else you want out there, but we're going to go with this one. Now, this, of course, is the proper area of it. These little wings, though, are actually going to be sewn across here because these become the tabs for making the shoulder strap for the canteen. And I made a couple of canteens off this pattern. They're pretty super cool. And yeah, we're good to go there. Now, material selection. Now, one of the things for you guys that are used to working with leather, you know what vegetable tan is. But for those of you who don't, so leather comes in a couple of different flavors on exactly how it's been processed. The original leather back in the day is something that we call vegetable tan, and that means that basically vegetable matter was used in the tanning process. In fact, the word tan comes from tannic acid because the way they used to do these leather hides was in the pit. They'd take a fresh hide and they would take oak bark that had a lot of what we call tannic acid. They would crush the bark, they put a hide down, put all the crumbles of oak on it, put another hide on top of that, and basically make this huge stack of this pit of leather and oak bark. And over the course of about 8 or 9 months, the tannins would leach into the leather, and that would give you vegetable tanned leather. Now, one property of vegetable tan leather is the fact that it is the only leather that can be molded, because our modern processes that uses different types of chemicals, then there's several of them. Chrome tans, what they call chrome salts, alum, does not produce the same type of leather that vegetable tan is. And as a craftsperson, almost always you're going to be using this type of leather. Now, as far as weight, exactly how heavy this stuff is. So this is some leftover material from our knife sheaths, and this is actually a heavier piece. So this is about what they call 10 ounces. They normally measure leather by like how much it weighs per square foot, and 10 ounce is pretty solid. 10 ounce is maybe 3/16 of an inch. Normally for most lighter knife sheaths, you're gonna go with 8, and 8 would probably be preferable. Using the 10 ounce stuff, this is going to be essentially an armored canteen. I mean, you're going to be able to club somebody over the head with this bad boy. I mean, it's going to be beefy. So, but this is the piece I've got left, and we're going to go with that. So very simply, we're going to need 2 of these, and I'm going to flip this bad boy over. Now, for tracing out, I usually prefer one of these markers, and make sure that if you're going to use the marker or in general, to always work on the flesh side of the leather. Nothing is worse than trying to get do a nice dye job and you've got a piece of marker left on the front side. So what I'll do now is I'll lay this bad boy out and come out here and mark out 2 of these guys, and then we're going to start cutting, and I'm going to give you some general directions on that. So when I'm doing this stuff, now, I'm going to tell you what I hate is the fact that this thing moves. Like, every bone in my body says glue this down so that you get a perfect trace, but that's not how it happens. So you just have to be very careful. You see this crap? You see this crap, gentlemen? You see this old age crap? Okay, so you're going to be very careful in doing your pattern. Look at that, I screwed it up already. And one of the reasons that I prefer the marker is because it leaves a clearer mark. You can use a pencil for this or a pen. A roller pen always has a bit of a time going over the rougher side of the leather. So the Sharpie marker, the fine point Sharpie marker, is always what I prefer. Now, I know you guys had, you guys saw the previous videos where we're talking about the leather clicker over there, our improvised leather clicker. And I'm going to tell you, this entire sequence of video here where I am going to be marking this stuff out and then cutting it for these 2 sides and then dressing the edges, all of that can be resolved with 1 bump of the clicker. So that's one of the reasons that having the right equipment is so critical. And trust me, no matter how good you are with this, at some point, this pattern is going to shift and you're going to get off. And you're going to be very annoyed, like I am very often. And come right on around here. Okay. And there are our 2 sides. Now we're ready to cut this stuff out. Now, this is where it gets to be a monkey because you can use all different types of tools. Some people like to use these guys. These are great for long straight cuts, but for these curvatures, that's not going to do you a whole lot of good. You can use scalpels, all that kind of stuff, but I'm going to show you a trick that I do. So check this out. I get these from the local big box store, and this is a standard razor knife. Now, this is not a retractable. This is actually a fixed. And I own like 8 or 9 of these because I have them like seeded and distributed everywhere. For leather working though, if you will take that standard blade and actually come in and carve that down a little bit, this makes a excellent leather cutting knife. Now, if you leave the edge in there, then you only can work with that tip because the wider that blade is, the more difficult it is to turn it. But if you'll come in and actually trim it down, this makes a fantastic leather knife. And this blade, you can tell it's kind of rusty on there. It's got some markings because I have just worn this blade out because it can be resharpened. So you're cutting the leather, it wears down. I actually come back and hit the blade with the buff and she's right back to it. So this is one of my preferred tools for doing leather work. There's some other good ones out there, but man, this is a, you know, big box store solution. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start by just actually separating these pieces carefully. That one out. And you can see it works, this thing works really good from both the top side and the bottom side. Actually, I think that was on my dating profile too.
Got him!
Okay. And now these curves, now this is always where you're going to end up, damned old age. This is always where you're going to end up cussing a lot because getting a clean line, especially in a curve, is always a pain in the patootie. And now remember, you'd rather have a little bit more than a little bit less. So as a general rule of thumb, I'm trying not to touch that line. I want to be just to the outside of it because I can always shave away, but I can't add more leather. Now, if you are so fortunate to have a 2x72 grinder, you're going to be in really good shape. And that's one of the things that I, you know, from a knife maker perspective and just a craftsman in general, the 2x72 grinder is like the universal tool. There's not a day that goes by that I don't use that grinder in some shape, form, or capacity. It can do a lot of cool things, and it allows you a precision that a lot of times you would not have. So what I'll do is I'll come in and I'll get close, and then I'm going to use that sander. Ooh, come on, big boy. Oh, look at that. Oh, it is my lucky day today. Okay. So there's our first one. I'll cut out our second one, and then this is how I'm going to go cheat. I will go to our grinder, and I have these lines out here. You can see from this side, you can see it's not bad, but it's a little rough. But I'm going to use that sander to actually get a very clean and very precise line right in there. So let's cut this second one out, and then we're going to go visit our grinder. So one of the reasons that we use a quality leather is you can see this leather is very stiff. If you start using bellies or the neck portion of the leather, it's going to be all flippy floppy, very spongy, and in general, it's going to produce a worse product. And not just because it may be inferior material, but also because it's not stiff. So because this is a good, stiff, thick leather, I'm going to be able to very easily actually come in here and shape this. Whereas if this was a belly or some type of inferior quality leather, it's just going to go all over the place. It's going to be stringy and terrible. So that's one of the reasons that you try to get good quality stuff. Okay. Let's do a little bit of sanding. Again, this is my old KMG. And here we go. All right, so that's going to be good enough for government work. Even though this isn't flawless, man, that's going to be plenty for what we need. So we'll basically copy that on this one, and then we'll be ready to glue up and do our stitching. So let me get her cleaned up, and we're good to go. All right, so guys, you guys should know this little tool here. This is called an edger. Now, real quick, one of the biggest issues I see with people using an edger is that it's not sharp, okay? So I'm going to show you a quick trick. Now I've got this piece of wood right here, and you can see that I have shaved myself a little sharp edge there. To get in there to sharpen this bad boy, what you can do is take that, and this is actually some 320 grit. Now depending on how fine your edge is, actually I wish I had some 600 for this, but I can put that over that edge, and this allows me to actually get in that particular crease and sharpen this tool. That was a trick it took me a long time to figure out because I've been dealing with dull edgers for a bit. Now you can see her sanding. We've got a good job here, but we do have this little ragged edge, and so to help facilitate our sewing without this getting in the way, especially here on the center, I'm just going to go in and take away the worst of that edge. Just that little fray, just to make things neat and clean. Now, one of the other reasons I do this, now, and I'm doing this actually because we're going to be using the machine, and the machine does a great job, but it does have a couple of kinks as far as being able to make sure that you see the edge clearly, that you don't get too close with the edge next to the presser foot so it pushes down into the machine. And if you've got these little flaps on there, that can kind of sometimes throw your view of it. So now this is not bad at all, but in general, I like to come in and just clean this up just as a matter of good practice. Even if you're hand stitching, it takes a little extra time, but it's not a terrible idea. Again, just, you know, it's neat and it keeps everything nice and neat. So let's do my other one over here. Beautimus. All right, it's time to get high. So guys, this is barge cement. Barge cement is kind of an industry standard. This is what they call a contact cement. Now, of course, back in the old days, they didn't have anything like this, but I'm going to tell you that this stuff makes leather working super much better, if that makes any sense. You can come in here and hold these pieces together and get you a couple of tack stitches in there. But using barge cement allows you to firmly put the piece in place for stitching, and it just really makes your life a whole lot easier. So contact cement, now one thing here, again, this stuff is aromatic to say the least. You always want to be in a well-ventilated or big room there because you can smell this stuff from about 3 counties over. It is, buddy, you're going to be seeing the Smurfs if you hang around this stuff long enough. But it comes with a little brush there. This has actually been thinned a bit. If I haven't told you, they actually sell a thinner, which is known as MEK. That can actually be picked up in your big box stores. And I usually like to have mine a little thinner than standard. But the whole idea is you use this brush to come around, and the edge that you're going to stitch, we are going to give it a generous coat. Now with contact cement, you don't want it thick at all. You want it thin. You don't want any glooby spots. You want a very nice, super thin, even coat that at least very properly wets everything. So, and oftentimes what I will do is I will come back with a scrap piece of leather, because you're always going to have like the high spots. I'll come back with a piece of leather and do this number. So any of those gloopy spots are taken off. And then you give that just a few minutes to dry, and you're going to do the same thing with the other side. Now, normally when we're doing our knife sheaths, what ends up happening is we actually have a hair dryer, and a lot of the times we'll speed the dry using a hair dryer. I was gonna clean my room, and then I got home. I was gonna smith some stuff, and then I got home. All kidding aside, guys, this stuff is really rough, so please make sure that you use your, like I said, that you make sure that it's well ventilated. Okay. All right, there we go. So we'll give that just a second to dry, and then we'll come back and pop these two bad boys together. And there's a couple of techniques that you're going to want to know when it comes to gluing up your leather. So we'll be right back. So guys, here we are about 5 minutes later, and we are good to go. Both sides have sufficiently dried. Now, the reason they call this contact cement is because when it contacts, it sticks. So there is a limited amount of movement that you can do after you get this bad boy on there. But we're going to very carefully get it as close. And this is why having matching sides is so particularly important. Looking good there. So now I'll come in and just hand press this around like that. And we have a bit of a sandwich. Now, she is not ready to go. The way that you really lock in that glue seam is you make sure you got a heavy bottom here, and you're going to take your poly mallet and you're going to hammer that seam. And that's what really ends up locking everything together. Now you can see we've got a little bit of overlap here, but man, if you can manage to get your patterns to line up that well, consider it an excellent day. A lot of the times now what will end up happening, if this wasn't lined up as well, I'd actually go back to the sander one more time and clean and line everything else up. In fact, I am going to come back and clean that up. Because when you're doing it with the machine sew and you're kind of going by that edge, and you can see if I went by that edge, if this was on this side, I couldn't tell that the other side was tucked in, and it may cause me to push my edge, my stitching seam too far. So I'm going to clean that up, and then we are going to go to the sewing machine. All right, so guys, you can see I have resanded this, got at the edge. Now look how pretty that is. If you can get your patterns, your blanks to fit this well, man, you are good to go. Even for hand stitching or anything else, having that good solid square edge is critical for a good stitch line, whether you're doing it by hand or whether you're doing it by machine. Because even if you're doing it by hand, you're going to take your calipers to actually come in and mark your stitch line. And if you don't have a clean edge, it's just going to be a disaster. So she is looking really good. Now, the one thing I am going to do here is I've got to come in and I've got to kind of draw a stitch line across these ears. I just don't want to kind of do these blind. So I want to give myself some guide. So we know that my foot's going to come in about right here, about 3/8 of an inch. I'm going to bring it down to here. I know my stitch line is going to be about right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just give myself some sort of guide as we come down here. Same thing here, about 3/8 of an inch. I know this is going to be in about 3/8 of an inch. Okay. Because what will end up happening is that we have this stitch line, and then we're going to have another stitch line that will come around the ear. So there actually will be 2 lines of stitching. This one will actually end up sealing the flask itself, and then this one will actually seal the ears. Now, you can probably get away without having to stitch this outside there. In fact, nah, I'm going to stitch it. I'm going to stitch it or it's going to drive me nuts. So I'll draw myself a line here. Those look nothing alike. But we're going to go with it. All right. Now onto the machine. All right, so guys, what we're going to do, I'm going to lift my presser foot here, and we're going to set this down. Now the first thing we're going to do is actually back this stitch up. So the machine is in reverse, and this is how we lock our stitch in. So very carefully. All right, there we go. We're going to go back and forward. Now these machines are so awesome because they are geared so low that you can make that needle absolutely crawl if you so choose. Then when you get a little bit braver, you can give it a little bit more speed. I'm not that brave. But the guys that have been using these machines for a long time, boy, they are just like I fear for the safety of my fingers at their speeds. And don't get me started like the little Vietnamese ladies that just they're like Marvel superheroes. They can sew so fast. I'll get that thread out of the way there. Slow it down just a little bit as I come up to the front. And that's going to be the last stitch there. Then I'm going to reverse the machine to lock the stitch. And so right there is where we're going to stop. You guys can see what we're looking like there. And to remove her, I end up pulling some slack. Make sure I pull my stitch back into the middle there, and we'll cut her loose. Okay, there she is. So what I'm going to do now is, you know what, I'm not going to sew those because they already look kind of funky there. We're going to leave that just like that. We'll go ahead and punch them, and they're not going anywhere. We're going to leave her right there. So yeah, sometimes discretion is the better part of valor. So guys, when you're doing your machine stitching, one of the things you have to do is you actually take that last stitch and you make sure and pull it back into the middle. And then the way that you finish these is you're going to snip them. And then we use the old Torch-O-Matic here. And there we go. All right. So now we're going to punch our holes here, and I'm going to guesstimate. I got a big old gasket punch here. See how that looks. It looks pretty good there. Now, notice how very little that sinks. One of the things that you need to have close by is a heavy block to back it with. Now, of course, you got to be careful. You don't want to go all the way through, so I've got a leather piece below me here. But you'll hear the difference. And you can actually see that punch moving all sorts of differently when you have a good metal block behind it. So we're going to tear that out. There's our piece, and let's do our other side. I am happy I didn't stitch that. Meh. Another reason to polish the barrels of your punches. Son of a monkey. Yeah, she needs some polish. But there we go. So now she's good and in place. And so, but now we've actually got to mold this joker. So what's going to happen is we are going to fill up a tub with some hot water, and we're going to let this soak. And then we're going to grab some sand, and we've got to pack this bad boy to give it that nice swell. So let me go grab some hot water and some sand, and we're going to get to stuffing this Thanksgiving turkey. So guys, here's our piece. I actually took the time to sign this. Again, this is going to our top Patreon supporters. So thank you, Trenton Ty 2025, and with his shop stamp. But in order to finish this out, we've got to now soak it. So it's going to go in our hot water over here for about, well, warm water, rather. Warm-ish, like maybe scalding. It'll work. It'll work. It'll go into our water over here for a few minutes to loosen this up, and then we got a packer full of sand. So check this out. So what's going to happen is you'll actually see the leather start losing air bubbles there. Use our super incredible stick here to push this down in there. Again, leather vegetable tanned is the only leather that can actually be molded effectively. This is how your gun cases and things like that, or gun holsters, are made. The old Corbully leather, before it was waxed, it was shaped using this particular method. And you can really, like, especially if it's a thinner leather, you can do some pretty amazing shaping with leather. I don't know if you've ever seen a lot of the people that do the cosplay mask out of leather. It's pretty incredible. So you can still see we got some bubbles coming up there. So we'll just basically let her sit in here and soak for a while. Shouldn't be but a couple minutes, just as all the air gets out, and then she'll be ready to start stuffing with sand. All right, so guys, she's good and soaked, and now you can see she is very flexible and pliable. So what's going to happen now is simply I'm going to open up our main channel up here. Sometimes you got to be a little forceful with it up here. Open that up, and now we're essentially just going to start putting sand down in here. Now this takes a bit. You can get a funnel, kind of help, but usually what I end up doing is just taking it slow. Because this thing will end up holding quite a bit of sand and therefore quite a lot of bit of liquid. it's going to expand quite significantly. Now what happens is you can see it starts building up. So as the sand goes in, especially this early stage, you really want to get in there with your stick and you want to start packing it to the bottom. And you can actually see where the sand is beginning to pooch the leather out. If you fill this thing up all the way before you start packing the bottom, it will not stretch this properly. So you have to get the sand in there and then really kind of start packing it. And I think I'm going to grab a cup or something here because my hand seems to be doing a really cruddy job of filling this guy. I'm trying not to get it everywhere, but I'm feeling like a cat in a cat box with a grudge against my owner. Okay. So again, notice from the side, you can see it where it's already starting to swell. I'm going to take our stick. And I'm going to set this here so you guys can actually see this swell. So watch this. If you don't do this early on, like I said, it will not stretch the leather properly. Okay, let's go back in for some more. Okay. Now guys, one thing to do, I am packing the patootie out of it. I mean, I'm giving this bad boy no mercy. I am really forcing it down in there. It's like we're packing this thing so hard, it's like it's Gay Pride Month in San Francisco. Please don't fire me, YouTube.
Right to jail, right away.
Every time I do this, I keep thinking about that old Looney Tunes commercial or cartoon where they're going dun 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 dun. All right, so guys, give me a little bit. I'm going to continue to pack this guy, and when I get done, we'll come back and show you what it looks like. All right, I think we're good to go there. I think you guys are going to be pretty impressed. That is a good packing there. You can see that we've got good three-dimensional shape, and again, this thing's like a tank. So it's held very firmly in place. It's being nice and stretched, and this leather is still wet. The last thing I'm going to do, I'm actually going to use my fid here, and I'm going to pop this down in here because I really want the opening to be good and round and also tapered so that it will take a proper plug on that end of it. So let me really cramp it down in there. Okay. All right. So we're looking good there. So now this is going to need to actually dry overnight. And one of the best places that what I do, especially with this heat that's going on down here, I'm actually going to set this in my truck outside so that she can dry. And so tomorrow we'll come back out, and then we're going to have to mix up the sealant, which is known as a brewer's pitch. We're going to get to make that and make a little bit of strap for her, and we're going to be good to go. A pretty cool little project. So guys, let's go pop this in the truck and get on to the next step. So guys, one of the most important things we can do with the leather canteen is how we seal it. Now here in the States, the information out there for how to do this is a little sparse. There's been plenty of people, of course, that have used beeswax in the time, but that wasn't exactly the most traditional piece because beeswax works in a particular range of temperatures because it's very soft. Now, if you were in England, yeah, you know, beeswax is probably going to be fantastic because it's very cool over there. But if you've ever been, so you'll get a kick out of this. I used to be involved with a medieval reenactment group called the SCA, the Society for Creative Anachronism. And a lot of these guys had this beautiful leather armor that had actually been molded and waxed, and it was called Corbully, and there's several other flavors. But I will never forget, we went to an event up above Americus, Georgia, and one guy who had this beautiful set opened his trunk. It was a sufferingly hot day, and his beautifully crafted and molded leather armor was like all in a puddle because the wax had gotten so hot it lost its integrity. So to counteract that, we're going to make something that was more accurately referred to as brewer's pitch. And this was used to seal the inside of kegs and barrels and tankards and things of that nature. And it's not just pure beeswax, it is actually pine rosin that has mixed with a little bit of beeswax to temper it. So the trick is rosin itself is very durable, but it's also very brittle. So by mixing it with the beeswax, it gives it a good bit of flexibility and plasticity and makes a far more durable product. Now, the actual ratios for brewer's pitch, as I could not find anything reasonable. It's all over the particular map. So what we're going to do in a very scientific wild ass guess method is we're going to do 50%. We're going to do half and half by weight. And so of course, since this rosin is again, this stuff can burn. Now I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of people that lean on the double boiler method, and that's what we're going to use now. Normally, I just put this right over the fire, but I'm going to be a good little boy today, and we're going to use a double boiler method. But here's my pot, here's our rosin, and here is a giant chunk of beeswax that I stole. Did I say stole? I mean acquired from a good friend of mine several years ago. 100% pure, good stuff. And so I'm going to turn on my scale here. It's like I'm in a drug lab. So what we got here is we've got, where's my thing? We got 300 grams in Canadian terms, and we've got 10 ounces in freedom units. So we're basically going to add enough rosin here to make this 20. Which should be 1 pound, 4 ounces in freedom units. Okay, we're good to go. Here's what we got. And now over here on the range top, I've got one of my enamel cast iron pieces. Now again, this is not what you would call a professional grade double boiler setup. So we're just kind of gonna float this bad boy in there and hope it stays put. We'll boil that water and we'll give it some time to be able to mix this stuff up, and then we should have some brewer's pitch. It's most likely going to take a couple of minutes. Yeah, so we're going to hang out and drink some tea and try not to sweat to death. So, hey, you know, go get you something to drink, you know, go, you know, visit the bathroom. We'll be here. See you back in a minute. So guys, here is our end product. This bad boy, it is pretty cool. The 50-50 mix of the beeswax and the rosin. It's very solid. It's still got some tack. If you really cram your fingers down into it, it makes a cool sound. Check this out. So it's awesome, awesome stuff. So what's going to happen is we are going to dry our canteen thoroughly, and tomorrow when it's been dried out, we're going to come back in, heat this stuff up, and we're going to seal our canteen. This stuff is pretty cool. I'm very happy with the mix. Now, again, it's what the scientists called hot as balls here in Georgia for this particular week. So this mix is not going to be great for 115 degree weather, but for nominal temperatures where people can actually survive, it should be perfectly okay, but we're going to put it to the test tomorrow. But guys, again, thank you so much for being here. By the way, I hate to keep reminding everybody, this video is brought to you by none other than my Patreons. We depend so much on their support to produce this run of videos. If you have time, if you have a moment, there's bonus content behind the scenes about the business. It's a couple of bucks or $5, but it makes a huge difference to what we're able to do. So guys, please slip over to Patreon at purgatoryironworks.com, and thank you guys for being here. I'll see you next time.